Hey designers, Sammy, I'm with Token Studio here, and today I'm going to go through some variables troubleshooting. How can I get theme switching to work once I've created variables? And I want to apply tokens to new design elements, but I want my product designers to see the variables instead of raw hex codes or maybe even styles. And I'm also curious about what happens for elements that have tokens applied previously and I want to just flip them over to variables very quickly. Should I be using variables or should I be using tokens? And when do styles even matter? So I'm going to talk about that now. So in the variables playground file for this series, you're gonna go to the page that says apply tokens and variables, and you're gonna see I have a little test case set up here. And I have one container that looks like a badge that has all the tokens applied, and then I have a couple over here that we're gonna work with. And so if you open up the Token Studio plugin for Figma, I'm going to move these so you can see the layers list here. If we take a look and I go into an inspect, you can see that I have a bunch of tokens applied here. And if I look, we've got nothing. And if I look at my local styles, I don't have any. And if I look at my local variables, I also don't have any. And I've got my theme group set up because we already know that we need to have token sets grouped into themes so that they can talk to Figma's variables and styles. So we're using these theme groups to power those. And now what we want to do is we want to compare what happens to elements on the page when tokens are applied first versus if we do whatever we can via styles or via variables. For right now, we're going to focus only on color because it will apply to everything else that you do. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create my variables and my styles. Now, if you go here and this is grayed out, it's likely because you haven't set up your theme groups. And what I want to do now is I want to create my styles and my variables. Just a note, if your themes are not active, at least one from each of your theme groups here, your styles might not create properly. So just do yourself the favor and make sure that you've got those all set up. And so now I'm just going to hit create variables. It works. Also be sure that your file is not living in drafts. It's got to be in a project, otherwise you might see an error there. And I also now want to create my styles. So I'm going to create those styles and we can create all of them for now because I've only got color set up. All right, I'm going to close the plugin. And what I want to do now is I want to set the color of these items using styles and variables. So I'm going to go over to fill and I'm going to go to badge. Styles. Now, what you'll notice when I was typing badge, these all have square, and it's going to always, Figma is always going to show you variables first. Those are the square ones, and you can see down here we've got styles if you scroll down. So I'm just going to click styles and do the same thing. Okay, so now that I have this example set up with variables, you can see because they're square, and I have this one set up as styles, you can see because they're round, and this one was tokenized before I created my variables, and now I'm just gonna do the color styles here with tokens after the variables have been created and the styles have been created to show you how that works. So if I go here, open Token Studio plugin, click the element I want to apply it to, and I want to go down to my badge component set, and I'm just going to very quickly do the background color. And what you'll notice is it's applied them as variables, okay? And now I'm going to do the same thing with the text here. It would apply with variables because my themes are active, but watch what happens if I turn off one of these themes or all of these themes, and I just use the checkboxes on the side. So I theme none, and now I want to apply this as text. Oops, not the icon color, the text color. And you can now see that it's applied as a style. And if we look at this, we can see that the background color was applied as a variable and the text color was applied as a style. And so what that means is if you have a frame and you just click the frame and you have no theme on and you're just using these checkboxes on the side and you apply it, it's going to apply it as a style. So I'm going to move this one over here. And if you have it apply, if you have your themes on, so let's go global, dark mode, tight, and I apply the background color here. Come on now. It's applying as a variable. So this one was applied via Token Studio. So were these technically, so I'll move them down. But you can see now that they're variables and styles. These ones were applied directly with Figma, and this was tokens first before we even created those variables. So, I mean, if I want to use theme switching now, you would think that we can go from dark to light just by clicking this button in Token Studio. And that's true for the styles, but the variables don't switch. And if I want this to work for my tokens applied not with styles, if I hit the check boxes here and hit apply to selection, it doesn't work the way that we expect it to, right? It's only working with the styles because the themes are on, and theme groups are powering styles and variables. So I can also change this to a different dimension theme if I want to, but the easiest one to see is light and dark. So theme switching is working when we have our tokens applied directly as styles. How do we do theme switching with variables? Well, you have to use the layer options in Figma. So once you've created variables with your tokens, you don't really have much option. You kind of got to do it with the Figma UI. So, you know, we don't really, you can do two at once as well. We'll just get these set up here and we'll go light. And then if they're together and they have the same options, you can do them together. That's fine. Now, what happens if we turn off these themes? And I just use the checkboxes on the side here. All right, so let's have these in dark mode now. And apply to selection is set, so I'm just gonna select everything to show you guys what happens. Now, what happens if I turn on my light set and I turn off my dark set? Everything that was applied with the token changed. Let's do it again. Everything that applied with the token changed, but the variables did not change, right? So what does that mean? It means that you want to apply with tokens as much as possible because it will give you the most flexibility. And what do I mean by flexibility? Let's say that we want to delete our variable collection or our styles because we're refactoring and we want to reconnect them or whatever it is. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, just deleting the variables and the styles in Figma does not delete the connection to them. If you go into your theme manager, you can see that there's still variables connected here. So if we, were to really kind of hard code delete everything that is connected and detach using these menus here. So I have deleted the variables and I've also gone through and you can see that there are no variables connected to any of my theme groups. And now I'm gonna sync variables just to clean everything up and just get rid of everything, all right? Now, if I look at my token example of what the badge looks like here, you can see that I'm no longer showing those saved values because they've been deleted. Same thing with styles. They're going to show hex codes because those have been deleted. If I look at variables, it's going to show me broken variables. This is what the question mark means for them. Tokens are showing here. What happens if we want to use that theme switching again with all these broken things? All right, so I'm going to select all, and I'm going to use my theme switching now. Oh, I need to have my global on. There we go. All right, so one from each of my groups. So the theme switching is now working, except for where my broken variables were. And the styles, because these ones are no longer connected to anything, but the tokens are there, right? So the tokens stay intact. They're not fragile. I also can, go back to just using, I could delete all these theme groups and I could just use my checkboxes like we used to do back in the day. And you can see that the theme switching is still working. If I want to change some of these options, right? Like let's say we wanted to change all these colors here and then repopulate the variables collection. Okay, so I've changed these colors from the blue, cyan to pink, and now I want to recreate my variables. And so I'm gonna make sure that my theme groups are on to recreate everything. And I'm going to create variables, and I'm going to create styles, and I'm going to select all, apply to selection. And what you can see is anywhere that there was a token, it's now auto-applied the matching variable. Auto-applied the matching variable. But where we had applied variables to begin with is still showing broken variables. Where we had styles applied to begin with is still showing raw hex codes. So when you have anything applied with the token first, it's flexible. Whereas if you apply with Figma variables or styles, because these are just expressions of tokens, when you remove that expression, you're removing the token at the same time. So you can't automatically or auto-magically fix a broken token just by a one-click operation. Whereas if you have your tokens first, it's fairly future-proof. So when your theme is off, it says theme none, and you're using your checkboxes, the tokens are going to appear as styles, round previews. Whereas if you applied the tokens when the themes are on, they're going to show up as variables. Now, let's say we want to clean this up so that everything is consistent. All right. Now, if I select my options, and this is apply to selection, and I have theme none, I would expect that when I change these, they're all going to switch to styles. So this one here that is variables will be styles. Apply to selection. And now that's exactly what happens. So you can see that everything is styles, including this one here, which was variables, is now styles. And now I want to swap these over to variables. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use my theme groups because my theme groups are connected to my variables. And it just takes a second here. Happens pretty quickly. If you don't see it, you could always hit apply to selection, and now we've got the theme switching there, and I can use the Figma UI to do the theme switching, because you can see in the light mode it should be here. If I switch this over to light mode, only the one that was applied as the style is using the theme switching here. All right, so anything that was applied as a variable will never work for the theme switching, but if it was applied without the theme group on, so theme off, just using the checkboxes on the side, theme switching will work in here. But if I have my variables set up, theme switching will not work. If I turn this off, and I use my checkboxes on the side here, you can see that the one that is still connected to just a style here, the theme switching is going to work. Now, if you want a quick way to double check how things are attached without using the Figma UI, you can use the inspect panel through the Token Studio plugin. So you can see that these are all sort of round icons, meaning they were applied as tokens, even though they're presenting as these options. Whereas if I go down to our other examples, this one here was applied with variables, so you can see that they have these variables icons next to them. And this one was styles. So this one here is broken, so it's not showing anything right now. It's not showing a token, it's not showing a style. But if I go ahead and I add the style badge, background, and now click back in, you can see that we're showing the style. And if I change this one here as the variable, it's going to show, if I go into deep inspect to see more layers, you can see that the background default is set with a style and the text is set with the variable, which is exactly what happens if you look here. We have a round and a square, and we still have an old border color there from the old example. So